and when I talk to people, have you ever experienced a moment where you could tell it was complete fear and it was warranted? And they often think about it and they go, yes, I can. I said, do you see how that is different? And that's the one thing people say. It was very clear.
When is the problem not a problem? Have you ever asked yourself that? If you've gone to therapy, you may have been asked that question. But let me ask you another question. Do you even know what the problem actually is? These are questions that we are going to talk about today here on the Presidential Lifestyle Podcast. I am not going to have this conversation by myself. I am bringing to the floor my favorite therapist in the whole wide world. She has taught me so much. So a lot of what I share with you guys, I got from Natalie Kohlhaas. So welcome, Natalie, to the podcast. How are you?
Great. It is so good to see you, Kanae. I'm just so thrilled to be able to sit here and talk with you today.
I know. We don't get enough chances, to talk. We get them in, but not enough. But yes. I thought this would be a great excuse for us to talk. One, because we have such deep conversations, you and I, and people don't usually get to hear them. So I thought it'd be great for us to share it with the public this time and let them be a fly on the wall for our deep conversations.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
So we're talking today about when is the problem not a problem? And you already know why I am asking that question, but of course the people don't know just yet. But part of the reason why I'm asking this question is because two reasons. One, a lot of people are very focused on the problem. And I know from the work that both of us do, that is not where we keep the focus. It needs to be addressed in a different way. And the second thing is a lot of times people don't even realize that what they think is the problem is not the problem. So what have you experienced when it comes to clients, patients, even family members thinking that anxiety is their problem? But before you answer that, make sure you tell the people who you are and why I am asking you this specific question about anxiety.
So I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm also nationally board certified. I also have my certification in clinical hypnotherapy, and I've done a lot of training as well in brain spotting. And I have been practicing for, like 25 years at this point. I started out working with anxiety because those are my people. And so for years, delving into it and exploring it, working through it, addressing it in many different ways, has kind of led to a place of really my main focus of what I work on is doing anxiety. And so I'm known as the anxiety specialist. And I also work in, as you know, different ways where people who feel like talk therapy has maybe failed them, allows them to break that cycle and actually move in a direction for them that they know is the direction they want to be moving towards. Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. Of course, then I'm also a friend. I'm also a mother. I'm also a wife. I have a practice with a couple of other therapists that work with me. We're located outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I wear a lot of different hats, but all of those hats help me to kind of address that question about when is the problem not a problem, and do we really know what the problem is? And when individuals first step into the office and they sit down with me, they often are in a place of what I call misinformation.
Yeah.
So that misinformation is an understanding of their anxiety. And the way I often describe it to them is I have a sense that you want to take your anxiety, throw it in a closet, shut the door, and run away. And they're like,
Right.
oh, yes, that is exactly what I want to do. Please get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. And so I do a lot of education with them around the fact that anxiety is actually not the problem. Like you had said, when is the problem actually not the problem? And the problem truly is not anxiety. And I help them kind of reframe it in a way where they begin to recognize that the problem is something completely different. It's not one that they typically see initially, but when I start breaking it down for them, they can see the difference that's there.
Yeah. Before you go into what it actually is, let's talk a little bit about when anxiety becomes present, right? So I work in financial therapy, and a lot of times people have anxiety around saying no to their family members and all the people who are asking them for money because they are equating money and love. So anxiety comes up for them there, and we usually have to do some work around that. Money anxiety can come up around spending when it's time to spend money. If they are known as a saver, then they might feel some anxiety around spending their money, especially if they're in that scarcity survivor mode.
Yes.
Another place where, because I work with so many business owners and sometimes even athletes, anxiety can come up around performance. Like maybe they did a great performance before, or they closed a big deal and they're like, I got to close another big deal so I can keep making this name for myself. So those are three places that I see anxiety come up a lot. But you probably see different things, but what do you see when anxiety is most present?
So it's interesting because it may be slightly different scenarios, but we often have those same type of conversations. And really, in basically all of those three scenarios that you notice, people get stuck in that place where they're swirling. I have them begin to recognize that really it is fear is talking to them. They're not going to love me. They're going to abandon me. They're going to throw me away.
Yep.
I'm not going to have enough.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, if I spend it now, what will happen? What if?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or fear is saying something like, there's no way I'm going to be able to perform. I'm not going to be able to do my best. I'm not going to be able to succeed.
Yep. Yep.
And so when we listen to this voice that goes off, and this is how I separate it out for people, people think that this voice is actually anxiety. All of that talk is fear-based conversations and talk going off. This is actually fear talking to us. People also feel like, oh, I have my anxiety, and anxiety saying, yes, fear is right. Listen to it. Oh my gosh. And so I begin for people to begin to see it in a different light, which is if fear is telling them something that is one, not 100% correct, like they're never going to love me again. And or two, going to take them away from their values, right? Their value is maybe they do want to be able to take care of themselves and buy themselves something nice. And or three, take away opportunity. Here I have an opportunity to go out and show my strengths to myself, to other people. Anytime an opportunity is there, particularly with sports, those three things, if those three things are happening when fear is talking, this is when our anxiety goes up. So I walk people through thinking about anxiety and fear kind of go hand in hand. They walk around together. Anxiety is watching over to see what fear is saying. And if fear starts saying something that's not true, or taking you away from your values, or taking away an opportunity, anxiety gets very upset with it. And it's like, oh my gosh, don't listen to him. Stop. And it does everything it possibly can to get our attention.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not aligning with fear. It is a gatekeeper that's watching over to make sure fear is not pulling you off course and taking you away for what could be an opportunity, are your values, or again, just making up information that is just decided somehow or other that is correct, that there's really no evidence to support that is correct. And so
Mm-hmm.
when those things happen, that is when we actually experience anxiety. So in those situations, the problem now is fear. Anxiety is trying its daggone hardest get us to see, oh my gosh, stop listening to the problem. Stop listening to the problem and let's get into some action.
Mm. Yeah. I like how you said stop listening to the problem because they think that anxiety is the problem. And anxiety is saying, no, I'm not the problem. You're actually listening to the problem. I'm trying to get your attention, pull you away from the problem, close your ears from the
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
And you're not allowing me to do that for you.
Correct.
So so when they stop listening to the problem
Mhm.
and they do listen to anxiety or they do give anxiety any amount of chance, what
Yes.
happens then?
So I often do like a little metaphor with people to explain it, kind of thinking about it inside their heads. I tell them, I want you to think about you're standing in the table, and around this table are all these people. All these people are sitting there. They have books and they have computers and they have their phones and encyclopedias and all this kind of stuff. And you're standing there at a table, and when suddenly someone walks in and they throw down a piece of paper, we'll say it's an athlete, right? So an athlete's standing there, and on the piece of paper is, you will not succeed. Immediately, everybody at the table starts going off, boom, 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 and they start pulling up all kinds of information. Now, what you don't realize in the moment is that they have every single thought you've ever had, every single experience you have ever encountered, and every feeling that you have experienced in your life at their fingertips. So they start shouting out to you about, well, I remember when that didn't go well. And oh my gosh, do you remember when they didn't really try at that at all? And they're just throwing all kinds of things out, right? Now, the person sitting on the table is starting to listen to all of this chatter. They're getting very upset. And suddenly the conversation turns from all the things that happened in the past to all the things that are going to happen in the future. And if that happened in the past, there's no way you're going to succeed. It's not going to be possible. Don't even try. And they're just yelling and yelling and yelling. So in walks into the room. It's your very, very, very best friend in the entire world. And they look at you and they see you standing on the table and they're thinking, oh my gosh, Kanae, what are you doing on the table? Right? And they try to get your attention. They're trying to get you off the table. You're glassing over. You're not going to be able to hear them. They're trying to pull at your feet. They're trying to get you off until eventually they climb up on the table. They're shaking your shoulders. They grab you and they throw you out of the room and they slam the door. This is what we know as a panic attack. Right? So all the people that were around the table, those are all those little voices inside of our heads. The person who laid the topic down, that was fear. And the person who came in and rescued you is anxiety. So to answer that question, what anxiety is trying to do is to get you to step off the table. Please just step off the table. And if you will not step off that table, they are going to take you down. And the reason they're going to take you down is because they actually care about you. They love you. They like you. They cannot sit there and have you listen to all of that incorrect information
Yeah.
or information that's pulling you away from opportunity or your values. They cannot stomach it. They cannot, right?
Yeah.
And so what anxiety is attempting you to do is, can you at least recognize why, as I say, why is your girlfriend so upset at this guy? Ask yourself, as soon as you start feeling that anxiety, we feel it in our body because fear talks inside of our heads. So anxiety uses our body to get our attention. So as soon as we start feeling it, what I have people do is become aware and step off the table.
Yeah.
Once you can step off the table, reground, then you can ask yourself, why is my girlfriend so mad? Why is my best friend so mad at this guy? What is making them extremely upset right now? That is when you can start pulling it apart and realizing, well, maybe sitting here and listening to someone scream at me that I'm not going to succeed is not really the ideal thing for me right now.
Yes, yes.
Possibly not going to be what I need in this moment, right?
Yeah, I always love your metaphors. They are so good. I similarly talk about this in my work, and what I tell people a lot of times is, you know how people talk about self-talk? I do a lot of anti-self-talk because people believe that fear voice is them.
Yes.
And they're like, and so there's in the coaching industry and just, out in the world and on the internet, it's like, stop the negative self-talk. And your negative self-talk, the negative self-talk is not self-talk. It's not you
Correct.
talking. You're not talking to yourself. That voice is not you. And
Correct.
so I have to remind people, or even not even remind, but teach them that that voice is not you. You did not come up with that idea. In my work, it's society, because society has put all of these programs out there, right? And society is like the enemy. Like, so they are, that first thought that said, you can do this, that was you.
Yes.
And then all of the other,
all this chatter starts going off, right?
That is not you.
Yes.
So what you just described is a awesome way to describe my version. I really like your version. Oh, but it describes it. It tells those people around the table all those different fear versions. And we talk about fear in my work, and we have it under categories. And when I think about your metaphor, so we have all these lonely emotions, right? That's one person at the table, and they're like, you'll be alone, you'll have no friends, and then you have your lack person, and that person's like, you'll never have enough, you'll never be enough, you're not enough, right? And then you maybe have the money person, and they're like, what does this cost? You can't afford that. So you have all of these different people at the table, and they're spitting out all of this fear emotion, none of it being you, but you have been taught over the years, not your own fault. You have been taught over the years that this voice is your voice, and it's not. And that's so sad that people are going through life all these years, because most of the people that I meet with are 40, 50, 60 years old. I know when I first started working with you, we both worked with a lot of teens and young adults, but thank God they got to still work with us before they became 40. And I used to tell every single one of them, you have no idea that the other half of my practice is adults who are still going through what you are going through right now at 16 years old. Thank God you're getting this, learning this right now, so you don't have to take this into adulthood. You don't have to put up with fear running your life.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I always tell people, please don't let fear make the decisions for you. Do not let fear be your deciding voice.
Yeah.
Now, there are times people say, oh, well, what if fear is right? And so let's say you're walking down an alleyway and you see a whole bunch of guys with big old dark hoodies and baseball bats, and fear's going, turn around. Now, if your anxiety is like, yeah, listen to him, your anxiety is going to sit down and go, listen to that guy. Listen to him. You're actually not going to feel anxious. You're not going to have that muddled, anxious feeling. So again, right, all of our emotions are useful, right? So there are times when fear is right. And we do need to
Yep.
listen to it. Like, don't
Yep.
run off that cliff.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Listen to him. Don't run off the cliff. Don't do that. That's not okay. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
So there is some information in there that is accurate. But when these voices are going off, you're so correct. Those are not our voices. Those are voices that we've heard. Those are voices that somebody else has said, that we've gotten from television, movies, reading books, people in our community. And mostly it's often people who we love and may have been very well meaning,
Yeah.
but gave us messages that we held on to, that at one point in time, as I tell people, it could have been very, very useful. But as I tell people, it's like if you were to put on the pair of pajamas that you loved when you were 6 because they were fluffy and they were soft and they felt so comfortable, today they're not going to fit you. And so why are we holding on to these beliefs that we learned from other people when we're no longer 6? We have to update those. They don't fit us anymore. And every time they don't fit us, right, our anxiety is going to come up. Just like with financial. If it was, oh, well, you need to save all of your pennies. Well, that may have made sense when you were 6 because you didn't have a lot of pennies. And so you want to get something going. But when you're 40, no, you're actually allowed to spend some of your pennies out. That was why you were saving them. That's the point now, right? Now we're focusing on the problem rather than the solution. Yeah. And so we're making the solution now the problem, right? We're reversing it. We're going in the wrong direction at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you put that. So what if fear is right, when fear is right, anxiety won't fight against it. You'll actually probably get really clear. It's like kind of like when you watch a movie and then like all of a sudden things slow down. Those people come into it. You see the exits. You're like, go that way. Do this. It's like you just go. Yes. You react.
Yeah. You react and you understand why it is you're doing it. And at that point, you actually are following a value.
Yeah.
And so, yes. And it is and when I talk to people, have you ever experienced a moment where you could tell it was complete fear and it was warranted? And they often think about it and they go, yes, I can. I said, do you see how that is different? And that's the one thing people say. It was very clear. It was not muddly. It was not like this, I'm going to try to talk you into something kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it was just really clear, just what I had to do. Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that is so good. Okay. So we have a few minutes left, but there are a couple of things that I want people to understand before they go. One of the things that I love about your book, I have to make sure I mention this. One of the things I love about your book is, like I said before, your metaphors, but also that you draw from your own stories. And so aside from being the anxiety expert, because you have done this work for 25 years, you have also experienced some anxiety yourself. And how, aside from your training, how did you learn the difference, and what do you do in your life when it comes to working with anxiety and embracing anxiety?
Embracing it, right? As I tell everybody, embrace it as your friend, right? You need to really listen to your friend, and it's hard. It's hard to do that sometimes. But I always remember the very first time when I took my first graduate course class. And I was taking abnormal psychology, which I loved because, abnormal psychology, they're talking about everything and everybody in the class is like, oh my gosh, that's me, right? We all feel it. Like, I love everything. And we're all feeling like very vulnerable and falling apart. So, I remember talking about panic attacks. And I suddenly had a ding, ding, ding that went off in my head of, oh my gosh, that is me. I've been there. I have been in the ambulance being taken to the
Oh,
hospital multiple times because everyone thought I was having a heart attack at, 20 something, which is not going to be happening at 20 something. And of course, no one could figure it out. No one knew what it was. They just sent me on home. Had to get hooked up to all kinds of different machines and wear them for a couple of days. Nothing would ever happen. And it's suddenly when I was reading it, I had this little moment of clarity of that's me. That is
wow.
me. That is what I was experiencing. And so then I really had to think about what was happening at that point in my life. And I realized, all of my issues were starting to really come into play at that point in time. And I was listening
Mm.
to this guy, right? You're going to be alone. You're never going to be loved. Everybody's going to leave you. Why are you even trying? Blah, 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 blah. All the things that I had seen from other people and that was applying to myself, right?
Mm.
So once I
Yeah.
got that place and I kind of had that aha moment, and then I was fortunate enough to go and work with the Anxiety Disorders Institute in Atlanta and get my training. I then began to kind of pull it apart more and more with each of my clients and to be able to recognize and see it in a different way. The thing that often confounds me is how it is still misrepresented in the
Yeah.
community, just like
Yep.
you're talking about. That is not your voice, right?
Yeah.
It's still today misrepresented in the community, and people think their anxiety and fear are the same thing. And when
Yep.
we talk about emotions, they realize, well, they are different things. I'm like, yes. So why is it that you think they're actually the exact same? We don't have any emotions that are exactly the same, or
Right.
we have different names for them. I was like, yeah. So
Yeah. And that,
no, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Oh, so that kind of reminds me. So I just know so much about your work. So I'm leading here, but that reminds me that if you're having panic attacks, not you, you've had them, you will overcome them. But if you are a person who's having panic attacks and the community, society, and even other therapists that you have gone to have told you to do this work and that work and how to overcome them. Maybe you read a book, you saw it on the internet. You
Mhm.
probably have misinformation. If you have been misinformed as to what fear is and what anxiety is, then you're probably also misinformed on how to deal with it. Now, everybody won't be able to come work with you,
Mhm.
but for those who are watching this, what would you say is like the number one thing people kind of need to get to know? Now that we've already told them fear and anxiety is different, they're like, oh, whew, I'm so glad I know that. Now, what
Mhm.
else? What is the next thing they need to know in order to maybe try and help themselves
Mhm.
get through this work of differentiating between anxiety and fear? And I'll make
So
this their fear work.
yeah. So what we work with our individuals, one of the first things that I do is right. First, we have to get you off the table, and when we get you off the table, we need to calm the system down. And the best and the easiest way to do that is to do breathing exercises.
Mm,
When our body starts talking to us and everything is going off, we have lots of things that are happening that are not within our control. Our blood starts moving different directions. Our stomach is shutting down. We have our heart rate is going up. We're doing all these things are happening that are outside of our ability to control. But there is one thing that we can control, and that is the way we are breathing.
mm,
So we walk through for individuals, how do you breathe? When you start feeling anxiety, particularly that's better. But if you're already in panic mode, it will still work. Now, we always tell people this is not a silver bullet. This is
mhm,
not
mhm.
going to solve everything for you. You're still going to have whatever this is that's going off that we need to address. But I find most people have no idea how to breathe correctly. They say
Mhm.
they do, but then they don't. So some of the things that I would suggest is people really look into how does one breathe in order to bring their nervous system down and activate their vagal nerve so that they can think calmly, step off the table, decide why it is that their friend is so upset. All of those things happen when we learn how to breathe correctly. And this is not box breathing. This is not breathing out of one nose or the other. There is a specific way to breathe. So I would suggest if people are going to do some field work, look up how do I literally do breathing to bring down my nervous system.
Okay. Got it. And one of the ways, if they're not going to do it on their own, so let's say you're like me and not like Jason, my partner, who loves research. Me, I don't want to research. Tell me exactly where to go. I know one place they can go, and that is to your course. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Because you teach this in your course.
Yes.
And if they don't want to research it on their own, one way they could do it is in the course. Can you tell me a little bit about Harness Your Superpower?
Yes. So it is a 7-day course, and we call it a 7 days to a calmer you.
Ooh.
And it walks people through some of the very basic pieces, understanding how your anxiety is talking to you, becoming aware of it, how to step off the table, how to reground, and most importantly, how to learn how to properly breathe. Once you do that, what is the next steps so you can start pulling apart the information that's going off over here and making sense of where you actually need to be moving, right? And so in that course, you can get to watch me. I actually demonstrate the breathing for people. You can watch me and my breathing techniques. But this is really a basic that people do not get. They don't understand. They think, oh, I'm just going to take a deep breath or something like that. I'm like, no, that's not it. No, no. And so I always suggest people practice breathing when they're laying down.
Okay.
Because you literally have to feel your spine pressing into the floor when you breathe. And if you lay down, you can actually get that type of breath and realize, oh, I didn't breathe deep enough, or I need to breathe in a different way. We're not going to breathe up here, on our belly, right? And learn how to do it. And you actually have to practice it, because if you're trying to do it for the first time when you're in a place of anxiety and or panic, at that point, there's just so much going off. You're not going to be able to even think about it at that point.
Exactly, because it won't be natural enough, and so it would be too much thought, and you won't have access to the thoughts, because when emotion are high, logic is low, and you need the logic in order to get to the thought, but you won't have it.
Exactly.
So tell me the subtitle again. It was the
so it's 7 days to a calmer you, and it's a 7-day course. We try to break it down so it's not too much time, because people are very busy. So I try to make it so it's like 10-15 minutes of information, and then they have worksheets that they do throughout the day. So it's manageable, it's doable. You can always go back and you can look through it. But the website is harnessyoursuperpower.com. And we do go through the breathing techniques. And right now we have it for a great price. It's $47. I tell people you get 7 days of therapy with me.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
So if you ever thought about trying some therapy or doing some therapy, this is a great way to just kind of step into it for a moment and see a little bit about what the process is.
Yeah. So as we begin to wrap up, I want people to think about this question. Just answer in the comments if you have, or if you haven't. Did you think that anxiety was the problem before today? I'm really interested to know. I want to know. Maybe some people were, they didn't work with you or I, but they maybe knew, they figured it out, finally figured it out. But I know that there'll be a lot of yeses. Yes, they thought anxiety was the problem. And if you want to go deeper, now that you know that anxiety is not the problem, I just realized anxiety and society kind of rhyme.
They do indeed. They do indeed.
And everybody knows I love to rhyme. So the fact that anxiety and society got to approximately rhyme, yeah, I'm gonna have
We
to
need to
use
run with that one.
So if you thought anxiety was a problem, tell us yes or no in the comments. And if you want to elaborate more, after you say yes or no in the comments, if you want to tell us more, you might want to share. We love your stories. We want to hear your stories. So do share in the comments if you feel open to that, because anxiety is not the problem. The problem is fear. So let go of that old idea. And I talked about Natalie's book a couple times. And if you want to know more about where to get her book is called Hello Anxiety. Well, it's called Hello Anxiety, My Old Friend. And then the subtitle is Harnessing Your Invisible Superpower. And the website is helloanxiety.net. So as we wrap up, I will mention to you guys that along with all of the things and resources that Natalie has given you for those who are just curious about what financial therapy is, we have dropped a little financial therapy talk in there. So if you're just curious about what financial therapy is, you can also get the course, The Power of Financial Therapy. I usually say this is good for people who just want to know what society is. What society? Here I go. What is up with me today in society? What financial therapy is, what it isn't, why our brand of financial therapy called Self-Sync Financial Therapy is so powerful, some of which we already talked about today, because we address some of the misconceptions that society has been telling you, that even the industry has been telling you, and not that they are wrong. It's just that we've all been misinformed. And it's time for us to kind of sway in a different way. Let go of the old programming, the old pajamas that don't fit from when we were 6.
Yeah.
Time to let them go and embrace a new way to enjoy our lives. And one of those ways is to really get to understand who we are, who we are not, and don't let society tell us who we are. And so you can visit presidentiallifestyle.com to understand the power of financial therapy. So as we wrap up, I wanted to recap real quick. A couple of things you said. One, stop listening to the problem, which is fear, and helping people understand that fear is the actual problem. However, it doesn't have to have power over you.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the other thing you talked about that you want people to walk away with is that there is a way to breathe, that when you are in that situation, when fear and anxiety are happening, fear is happening in your brain, anxiety is happening in your body, and they're at odds, there is a way that you can bring yourself to calm, optimal, and you can then go to logical brain and say, okay, what do I do now? Is this fear talking? Oh, anxiety, thank you for getting my attention. And you can become more calm. Anything else you want to remind them or leave them with that I didn't bring up?
No, I think you did a great job. I will say, though, please do Kanae's course. She is amazing, and her coursework really will assist you to recognize, right, all those different voices, and to hear how those voices are not only not your own, but I will let you know, are going to be fear-based. And please don't let fear direct your lives. This is the place where we're seeing, right? People are talking about anxiety levels are growing, and that is because fear is currently growing in our society. And so anxiety is having to work harder and harder and harder to get our attention so that we can come to a place of connection and cooperation Fear wants us to, stay in our little rooms by ourselves, not be with anybody, not connect. Everybody's scary. Don't do that, right? Isolate, isolate, isolate. When really our internal system knows and ourselves know we are more powerful when we're together. When we're together and we're connected and we're sharing that, that is when we can overcome whatever is in front of us. And so please take an ACE course. Please don't let fear direct your life. And please recognize this is a lot of what society is currently battling with, is fear telling us, don't go out, don't connect, don't get to know your neighbors, don't. I always say, fear always says, don't, can't, don't, can't.
Won't,
so
won't.
Please try to find that place. Listen to yourself, listen to your body, take small risks, right? And start running into your life rather than away from your life.
Oh yeah, I like that. Run into your life, and I'm glad you reiterated that and like drove that point home, because people so are running away, so are disconnecting, and we need each other. And all of the fear that came up in the last 2 or 3 years, it is time for us to say, wait, fear, stop talking, just shh. I know, right? Yeah. And thankfully, I'm screaming this message from the mountaintop. Thankfully, you are as well. And the more we can get it out there, the more that people will begin to connect, stop listening to fear, understand anxiety, use it when it is appropriate. Like, hey, this is when anxiety is trying to get your attention and pull you in a different direction. Listen to fear when it is appropriate, because like we said, you don't want to jump off that cliff if you don't have something, harness, parachute, something.
Exactly. It's not going to be a fun experience. Don't do that.
Right. So fear, we're not saying fear is the enemy as much as we're saying fear is not always right.
Correct.
So yeah. So that's a nice little wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys are on LinkedIn, that is a great place to connect with Natalie professionally. If you are in the market for a new course, then buying her course is awesome. It's a great idea. And if you like reading more, you'll also get a lot of value from reading Natalie's book. So all of these clickable links will be in the description of this video. So you don't have to memorize any of this. You'll just scroll down and click, and we'll take you right there. Leave it to us. So thank you, Natalie, for joining me. I'm so glad we got a chance to hang out.
It's so good to see you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, guys, and thank you for staying all the way to the end, because you rock. And the fact that you stayed all the way to the end says that you are taking care of yourself. So you will be living the presidential lifestyle in no time. I'll see you next week.